So welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a good short 5 minute, away from the screen to stretch your leg or look at a social media post. So we are back, and I'll get my colleague to zoom in on the Asia Center panel here. Thank you very much. The next panel is Panel 4, Managing Communications During Public Emergency, the case of Thailand and Japan. We're now shifting gear from largely the earlier panels of the day where we focus more on issues of crisis communication, innovation in communication, as well as digital transformation in the era of COVID-19 pandemic and its impact. Now we are looking at, looking at how communications are managed during a public emergency. Chairing and also speaking at this panel is Ajahn Jessada Salathong from Faculty of Communication Arts, Chulalongkorn University. Jess, good to see you here. So welcome. I'll pass the time over to you to explain the panel and the speakers and to let you manage accordingly. Over to you, Jess.
Okay. Good afternoon, James, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, everyone who joined today's conference. Once again, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Jessada Salathong, a full-time lecturer at the Faculty of Communication Arts, Chulalongkorn University, and the chairperson of the MA International Program at Chulalongkorn at our faculty at Chulalongkorn University. So for today's panel, we have 3 papers to be presented under the theme of managing communications during public emergency, the case of Japan and Thailand by Faculty of Communication Arts, Chulalongkorn University. However, we also have our guests from Faculty of Mass Communication, Chiang University, to join us as well. So first of all, I would like to briefly introduce about the background of our panel. So our panel will be our panel will shed the light on the communication in the emergency situation, especially in COVID-19 situation. I myself will present a paper on the case of Japan, and for another paper on integrated brand and marketing communication for higher educational institutions, a case study of Chulalongkorn University, will be presented by Assistant Professor Pattaratanakun from Faculty of Commerce and Accountancy, and together with Ajahn Ek. Actually, this paper co-written by Professor Parishat Stapitanon as well. She's from Faculty of Communication Arts, Chulalongkorn University. Okay, and I will present the topic, the paper entitled "Challenges in Communication During COVID-19 Situation in Japan." Okay, and then we're gonna have the last presenter from Faculty of Mass Communication, Chiang University, Assistant Professor Kwanfa, Sriprapandh. He will present his paper entitled Hegemony, Counter-Hegemony, and Lesson Learned of Conflict Resolution by Using Cultural Studies Approach. Okay, so this is our panel. Okay, so let me start with my paper first, and then followed by Ajahn Ek. Then we will finish our panel with Ajahn Kwanfa's paper. Okay, so let me share my slide first, and then I will take my time for the presentation, about 15 minutes, followed by Q&A after this. Okay, I hope you can see my slide.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. So, well, my paper is Challenges in Communication During COVID-19 Crisis in Japan. Well, this paper actually is a part of a big research project funded by National Research Council of Thailand through Institute of Asian Studies, Chulalongkorn University, with the title COVID-19 Pandemic Prevalence, Impact, and Government Responses in Asia. So actually this project have studied about COVID-19 situation and their government's responses, and as well as the way that civil society in each country respond to COVID-19 crisis. We have Japan, we have China, we have Singapore, we have Thailand, we have Indonesia, we have India all together. However, my part focus on Japan, and I have one more co-researcher from United Nations University Institute for Advanced Study of Sustainability, or UNUIAS, in Tokyo, Japan, Dr. Upalat Kawatanasakun. He is my co-researcher. Okay, so as I told you, actually, this project cover 5 pillars of their study, including communication, education, civil society, public health, and public policy. However, in this paper, I would like to focus solely on communication part of our Japan's paper. Okay. So, well, actually, I have got a lot of questions from my friends, from my audience, because I'm also the news anchor in Thailand as well. So, like many people have this question that, well, actually, if we look at Japan, we expect Japan to deal with COVID-19 situation very well, especially before Olympic Games in Tokyo that just finished. So we expect that Japan will be more prepared and manage the situation better. However, this is one of the criticism from the writer of Nikkei Asia. He raised the point that actually Japan has a very high capacity to deal with COVID-19 situation. However, the situation was not that good, and the number of people infected and the people who got vaccinated are not good at all. So this basic question, like is the same question that I have in my mind as well. As a former Japanese scholarship students, like I also had the same question that actually, if you look at Japan, they should perform better than this, but why? So actually, if we look at Japan society and the expression among Japanese people, we may think that they pretty calm, but actually, well, many people, and including business sectors, they also feel frustrated, and they feel something, against the government policy and management as well. So that's why they brought a page on the newspaper in Japan, and they put this advertisement to criticize the government's reaction, to criticize the government's mismanagement on COVID-19 situation. Okay, aside from that, although Tokyo Olympic was successful, like many leaders in the world and many people, like praise Japan that managed the situation very well, and the game went smoothly. However, if we look at the number of infected cases, it was surged during the Olympic game, and in terms of disapproval rate by the Japanese public, they also disagree with Olympic Games, and they really want to see Olympic game was banned in Tokyo. Okay, so because all of these factors, because all of these observations, I came up with the very fundamental research questions about communication strategy in COVID-19 situation in Japan. The first one, what are the challenges for communication during COVID-19 crisis in Japan? And the second one, which is very important for Thailand, what are the lessons learned from Japan that we can get? However, as I just freshly finished interviews with my informants, I may have to take some time more to write the paper in order to give the suggestion on the second research question. However, let me take you to their findings in the first research question. So before we move on to the findings and my observations, let's go to the methodologies I use in this study. So there are two methodologies that I use. The first one is secondary data. I mainly use their three reports for my study. The first one is Reuters Institute Digital News Report and World Happiness Report. And last one, Repression and Resilience, COVID-19 Response Measures, and Migrant Worker Rights in Major East and Southeast Asian Destinations. All of these I focus on Japan cases. Okay, and the second important methodology is in-depth interviews. So these are the 8 interviewees that I got as my key informants. They are the mix of healthcare practitioners in Japan, their academia in Japan and in Thailand as well. So we would like to ask them with from different perspectives. You know, and I summarize what they mentioned about communication strategy and the result of communication during COVID-19 situation in Japan, and summarize it in this paper. Okay, so we have, as you can see, we have professors from Jessada University, we have medical doctor, we have the professor from media and communication from Japan. Okay, so the first finding that I got, and I think this is very important to look at, is trust and leadership. Okay, as we learned that the Prime Minister of Japan has changed it on September last year. So it's exactly 1 year from Shinzo Abe to Yoshihide Suga. And then Yoshihide Suga, he just announced that he's not going to run for the presidency of LDP party. That means he's going to end his prime ministership after the end of by the end of this year. So many people, you know, they had a question. They got a lot of puzzle on a question, and they asked their leadership of Yoshihide Suga, Prime Minister Suga, because unlike Shinzo Abe, that he has charisma and he could manage to communicate with the public very well. He holds the press conference every Friday, and he tried to answer all the questions to the public and press. Okay, so this can make the situation went quite well, and people quite trust the government at that time. Unlike Suga, he tried to avoid press conference and speaking in front of the public until the public Twitter and social media, as well as reporters in Japan, you know, asked where is Prime Minister of Japan, because he has been disappeared for quite a long time. Okay, and if we look at the confirmed cases of COVID-19 situation in Japan, you will see that from last year, from the beginning of this year, the number of infected cases went up, especially during the Olympic Games. That's why the public feel so angry, you know, on the Japanese government mismanagement during Olympic Games. Okay, and this also affect the Prime Minister's approval rate as well. So as you can see that over the past year, his Suga's disapproval rate went up, while his approval rate went down a lot. So this is another reason why he decided to step down from the leader of LDP party, which is mean that he's going to step down from being a Prime Minister of Japan as well. So well, this is one thing that I noticed that leadership of the Prime Minister of Japan play a very important role on the trust building to the public, and is also affect the situation of COVID-19 in Japan as well. Okay. And another point that I would like to mention is the combat, the battle between central and local government in Japan, because in Japan, if you look at the system in Japan, is pretty decentralized. Local governments, especially in each province, has a lot of authority. So it's good and bad at the same time. Okay, it's good because the mayor and the governor of each province has its own right to exercise their own regulations and law. Okay, however, this creates the lack of single message in Japan as well, because when the central government say something, and then the local government may say something which is against what the central government said, or sometimes they said something differently. Okay, so this caused a lot of confusion to the public in Japan as well. However, we can see that the local government leaders, especially mayors and governors for the local government in Japan, they play a very important role and very outstanding role in combating with COVID-19 in Japan. For example, we have the rise of Japan's governors like Ms. Koike, the governor of Tokyo, or the young Japanese governors. On your left-hand side, he's the governor of Hokkaido, and on your right-hand side, he's governor of Osaka. All of these three people are among one of the very trusted governors in Japan, and they got a lot of popularity in Japan. So actually, we can see this situation as a struggle, or like a battle between the local government and central government, and of course it's really politicized, because the governors of each province, they also want to gain popularity with the aim that they may want to join the national politics in the future as well. So however, the lack of single message is a big problem in the COVID-19 communication in Japan, because the local government got really confused by the messages from the central government and the local government. Okay, so however, if we look at the way that the communication tools has been used by local governments and central government, you will see that they have a mixed use of communication platforms and tools. For example, for the central government, they try to digitalize the platform. For example, they came up with the Kakao platform, which is the tracing platform that all the people in Japan, including foreigners, have to download the app, and it's gonna trace you, it's contact tracing app without asking your personal data, because personal data protection in Japan is really crucial. And this app, on one side, they try to respect your personal data protection. However, on another side, some people said that this is the failure of this app, because they cannot get any record, your personal record. So this make this app is not effective as it should be. However, we can see another way that they use offline. Okay, they use offline platform as well, aside from online platform that I mentioned about the application called Coco. In Japan, actually local governments employ their out-of-home media and offline on-site media in order to boost awareness and visibility of COVID-19 policies in Japan as well. For example, you can see that this is on the street of Shibuya in the central Tokyo, in the heart of Tokyo. So the local government use a bus with a billboard like this, with the speaker, in order to attract people's attention. So this is a very conventional platform to spread the message to the public. Not only the Tokyo government who use traditional platform, but other local governments in Japan use the same way as well. The mix between online platform and conventional platforms. Like I interview some of our informants who live in the countryside of Japan, in Iwate in the northeastern part of Japan, for example, he also mentioned that the use of local media like this, especially conventional media, is really effective for local people. So of course, when we move to digital media or online media, it can be an option. However, we cannot forget to use the conventional media in order to boost awareness and COVID-19 policies as well. Okay, and there are two more aspects that I observed. The first one, cultural dimensions. Well, if we look at Hofstede framework, Japan has uncertainty avoidance, which is very high, and collectivism as well. So when we look at the lockdown policy in Japan, it's different from other countries because it's not legally binding. So the central government cannot make any penalty or punishment to any Japanese who don't follow the lockdown rule, because this is written on the Constitution of Japan. However, if we look at this, Japan can successfully manage the situation, although it's on voluntary basis. We cannot ask the people to, by using law in order to enforce them to lock themselves at home. However, for Japanese society, they have collectivism aspect, which is very strong according to Hofstede's framework. So what does it mean? So in Japan, it doesn't mean that people follow the rule very well, but because of collectivism aspect, that peer pressure and social pressure are very strong in Japan. So in terms of communication, well, when we spread the message about like lockdown policy to the public, okay, so the government also asks the public to surveillance their neighbors, and their friends as well. This is the attempt of the government to highlight collectivism aspect in Japanese culture. Another thing that we can see from Japanese example is they use name and shame policy as well. For example, if any clinic or any hospital that they don't accept people who got COVID-19 infected, the government will name and shame. So they will put the name of the hospital or clinic onto the public. So in this case, collectivism point of view can highlight and can support the way that the government use communication technique in order to raise collectivism aspect for Japanese. Okay, and for uncertainty avoidance, well, in Japan, it's very difficult to make any change in Japanese society and way of life because they try to preserve, and maintain the status quo or the way that they do. So this can also put another difficulties on new implementation on new normal way, when the government try to ask people to do anything, like in the new normal way, because Japanese people try to, they are not familiar with disruption or something new, because according to the Hofstede framework, the uncertainty avoidance aspect is very high in Japanese culture as well. One of the example is when the government asks people to work at home or study at home, it's very difficult to make any change and make a move in Japanese society, because in Japan, normally they have to go physically be at the office and work together. So this is a part of collectivism as well. So they are familiar with, their lifestyle, getting on the train, go to the office and work together, okay? And in terms of documentation in Japan, they don't use e-signature. They are not familiar with e-signature. They're gonna use a stamp called hango. This is very important for Japanese documentation. So in order to get all the documentation approved, you need to be physically there and get the physical hango in order to do so. So in order to make this change, it's very, very difficult for Japanese society as well. So when the Japanese government, or local government and central government, ask people to change their lifestyle, this is quite quite difficult for them to make any change, although they try to communicate with people that, okay, you have to stay at home, you have to work from home, you have to study at home. Okay, and the last observation I got is infodemic. Our informants mentioned that, well, although we can see that Japanese media did not spread like fake news, like what we can see very more often in Southeast Asia. However, what makes the situation pretty worrisome in Japan is the infodemic in social media, especially Twitter, which is the largest, the most popular platform in Japan. So infodemic, and fake news and conspiracy theories, has been shared a lot on social media in Japan. So this also highlighted another weakness of Japan in terms of the lack of fact-checking body. Because if we look at other countries like in Taiwan, for example, they have established fact-checking body, for example, like co-fact, or their fact-checking centers co-organized by the government and civil societies, but not in Japan. So actually infodemic is another problem in Japan, because there are so many conspiracy theories that related to the previous experience in Japan. For example, to get vaccination in Japan, it was slow at the beginning, because there was the case about the mismanagement of vaccination in the past history of Japan that really make people sick and die. So because of this scenario, like people afraid about vaccination in Japan. And at the beginning, there were a lot of rumors about vaccinations in Japan, that if you got vaccinated, you're gonna end up to be like the previous cases in Japan, which is really harmful to your health and your life. So this news spread so wide in Japan. So well, we can see that infodemic is still a problem in Japan. It's a problem in Japan, like WHO already warned that infodemic is also important, during COVID-19 situation. And the lack of fact-checking body in Japan also made the situation went bad. Okay. So okay, and the last point that I would like to mention is the lack of communication towards marginalized groups in Japan. So when I talk about marginalized group in Japan, I would like to highlight on women, elderly people, and alien workers in Japan. So according to our interviews and our literature review, we found that there was no specific communication platform or communication message towards women, which is suffered quite a lot during COVID-19 situation. There was a statistic mentioned that a lot of women, the number of women commit suicide went up during COVID-19 situation, because they suffered from domestic violence, because they have to be with their husband 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And plus, normally women in Japan they rarely get the full-time job in Japan. Normally they got like short contract. So when the business got affected, women gonna be the first group among the first group who got fired. Okay, elderly people, of course, Japan is an extreme aging society in the world. However, there is no such a specific message towards elderly people in Japan and alien species as well. According to the aging society problem in Japan, actually right now there are increasing numbers of alien workers from other countries in Japan right now, but there is not enough communication towards this group of people as well. Okay, and lastly, well, for this part, my brief observation on the lesson learned. The first one, the leadership and single message is really important, and this is really go hands in hand with what the WHO highlighted about so-called, which is single overreaching communication outcome. So in order to call upon any action by people, which is really important during COVID-19 situation. So we need to have single message. So in this case, not only in Japan, but other countries as well, in Thailand as well. I think if we look at the past experience that we encounter, the lack of single message caused a lot of problem in Thailand and other countries as well. So this is really important that the government and the whole society or any authorized agencies in Thailand need to ensure the single message. Or this is the first lesson learned. Okay, and the mixed use of communication in Japan and the way that they localize the way that the localized platform for the communication is really important. So it doesn't mean that we go for digitalized platform for apps only. We cannot leave anyone behind. We have to think about inclusiveness as well. So we have to get everyone into this information flow in order to fight against COVID-19. Okay, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, that inclusive communication is really important, is really needed. Okay, we cannot leave someone behind. We need to get elderly people into our action. We need to get younger people into our action, and alien workers in Thailand as well, because we have to accept that we have laborers from Myanmar, from Laos, from Cambodia in Thailand as well, and they are really important for our country's development. So in order to get them included, we cannot forget them. We have to spread the message in order to reach them as well. So these are their observations from my side, their lesson learned from Japan, and their challenges that I found on top of their document, on top of my text research and interviews. Okay, that's all for me. So James, would you like to have Q&A after each presentation, or would you like to collect the Q&As at the end?
Yeah, I think at the end.
Okay, so if we're gonna collect Q&As at the end, now I would like to pass the floor to our next speaker. He is right here already. So the next paper is Integrated Brand and Marketing Communication for Higher Educational Institutions, a case study of Chulalongkorn University. Actually, this paper co-written by Professor Pattaratanakun from Faculty of Communication Arts and Assistant Professor Pattaratanakun. Okay. However, today Ajahn Ek will be representative from their authors to present. Okay. Now I'm gonna pass the floor to Ajahn Ek. Ajahn Ek ครับ เชิญครับ
Thank you very much ครับ Ajahn Jess ครับ Thank you very much everyone for coming in, and I would like to bring you to something that we all happen to be familiar with. It's higher educational institutions. Once it comes to the notion of COVID-19 pandemic, then things got changed quite a lot. Therefore, it's time to talk about the communication in the field of higher educational institutions all around the world. Of course, it's the thing that we haven't seen, have never experienced it before. So what should we do? And what have we done at Chulalongkorn University might be a case study that we can actually share, and let's see how it goes. So let's get started. Of course, I put not just Chulalongkorn University brand and Asia Center brand right there, and this is logos, of course, but put COVID-19 right over there somehow as well. So we got infected, not just in terms of the health, but in terms of the wealth, and in many ways, including the communication part. So what happened and what's unique about higher educational institution these days? So we got lots of challenges. The external challenge, the first external challenge that we got is digital education, and it plays a vital role these days, as you can see, in terms of research design, in terms of learning experiences, in terms of teaching in the class, right? Digital plays a vital role because of the pandemic, of course. So safety comes into play. Then you see the economic recession and lower budgets for all the institutions all around the world. Then we found something interesting, and is related to communications for some reasons, and that's ranking races. So you got the rest. And then you got rankings, not just one ranking, but many rankings all around, right? And that's what really happened in terms of the external factors. Then you have the internal factors. I may argue that the higher educational institution got very unique characteristics in terms of communication and marketing on my side. The one thing is many institutional education, higher educational institution has a very strong tradition, including Chulalongkorn University. We pride ourselves with our history of more than a century old story in terms of the higher educational institution of the country. But of course, the thing that comes with the tradition, the thing that's come with the history is tradition. Right? And then once you would like to move, it's a bit more difficult compared with some other firms or brands. Because silo-disciplinaries, on the right side, you have many disciplinaries all around, lots of specializations all around. However, sometimes you get conflicts out of different disciplinaries, and you may get silo-disciplinaries as well. So on the brand and communication side, you have communication arts, but you have marketing. And then you have arts, fine arts, and you have architecture and industrial design. And they'll talk about brands and communication in somehow different ways, right? So we got silo-disciplinaries there. The way of thinking can be different. And not just that, we got different generations to have generation gaps. But in one institution, you have many good issues all around. So if you would like to focus on all the issues, then people get confused out there. So it's just difficult. So once you combine the external part and internal parts together, it is very clear that people talk about VUCA world this day, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, right, in terms of pandemic situation. But in the university in general, it's super VUCA, not just VUCA, I may argue. Therefore, it is difficult. So I would like to show you what happened at Chula as a case study for the talk today. So we combined the two parts of branding and parts of marketing altogether. So the first thing first is the branding part. Branding in this case is not actually just the design, not just the identity, but it is also the directions. So we talk about brands in terms of communication directions. How can we actually bridge the gap in terms of silo-disciplinaries and also the gap in terms of generation, right? So what happened? We use the methods of deduction of all the data, and we try to get the stakeholders, as many as we could, on board. So we combined 4 parts: internal database, using annual report, strategic plan of a university and other documents. Then we have brand intelligence. So we got the news 1 year back, and the competitors of the university and higher educational institutions all around in terms of public data of them. Then we did the research with the faculty members, officers, students, and alumni, and try to combine the issues. And you need to address their issues in terms of communications somehow. Just to show you some artifacts that we have done. So this is from the executives. So in terms of deduction, we deduct the issues from the executive, and we found altogether 7 issues that Chulalongkorn University should talk about: diversity, intelligence, integrity, tradition, leadership, excellence, and creativity. But not just the parts of executives. We actually talked to the students. So we asked the students in many classes, altogether more than 400 students got to be the representatives of Chulalongkorn University students, right, to come and did the deduction process. So it is actually in Thai, sorry about it, but these are just the artifacts of the research that we have done. And we found from the student sides, tradition match well with the executive. Number 1, match well with excellence of executive. Pride match well with the executive. And we found leadership and excellence should be there. But looking from the student perspective, they would love to have the term opportunity. So for the students to go into the university, it's the opportunity. So talking about opportunity in life will be very valuable for them. That's the student side. Then we have the alumni. And these are the artifacts of the alumni side. Lots of things in Thai, sorry about it. But just to let you know, it's the deduction process. And then we found from the alumni side, right? It's the traditional, of course, the pride, of course, leadership excellence should be there. But we found something which is interesting in terms of alumni is bond. So we need to have the bond part in the brands of Chulalongkorn University as well. So combines these three things with the other parts that I have already mentioned. We found altogether 8 aspects that we should talk about in terms of our brand. So excellence, leadership, pride, diversity, integrity, opportunity, bond, and answers, right? So it is important. If not, the communications will be all around and we will not have the clear message for the university. We make it clearer in the sense of brand structure by having 3 important elements. The first one is actually brand DNA. So we combine the 8 elements here to form something that is easy to remember. So we got the 4 S's for the brand DNA. Solutions, smart, sharing, and social value. So we will not talk about just the excellence or smarts. We will talk about solutions to the society, for the society, and try to share value back to the society. That's the most important part. So the part of sharing, it's about bonding in terms of what we got elicited from the alumni as well. So you see, so once we got the branding process first, we can see the directions in terms of very clear manner. Then we got a new positioning of the university, and this is the positioning of the university. Instead of talking about tradition or history solely, we will talk more about the part of innovations in the plural form. As you can see, innovations for society. If it is just innovation, and we cannot find any benefit out of that innovation in terms of the society as a whole, we will not talk about it that much, right? Let it be in the laboratories. History, of course, we can do that, but we try not to talk about history that much, right? Because after the brand direction solicitation, we found innovations or future should be talked about more. Then we have 3 important issues, and I'll talk about these issues a little bit more in terms of marketing communication, and you see the integration of the 2 parts, the brand and the marketing parts. To future leaders, impactful research and innovation, and sustainability. Any issues at all that happen to be around that might not fit with these 3 issues, we will not talk about them that much anymore. So just to make it clear. So we got the brand of the university in place, right? From the analysis of many generations, many group of people, right? In order to avoid the conflict between many groups of people in the university. So I would like to bring you to the next part, the part of marketing. So after the direction is clear, then first thing first, in terms of marketing, we actually did the internal marketing communication first instead of launching the brand and communication all around. So internal marketing communication comes first from top to bottom. As you can see, the University Council, Dean meeting, school or department PRs, right? Student networks, and parents. We include parents here. So they will understand exactly what happened. So instead of talking about what we will do out there in public first, we go for the internal parts first. So that they got a very clear picture of what will happen next. Then it's time to move forward to the outsider. So let's talk about the brand issues that we have been playing with. And I should not say playing, dealing with, right? Future leaders. I would like to give you some examples of communications from the Chulalongkorn University parts. The part of future leaders, for example, during the Olympic Games in Japan, we got very good news that one of our students got a gold medal from the Olympic Games. So that's a future leader indeed, right? But not just one. We got 9 Olympians in the university. So we should talk about that. And we talk about them, of course, right? That's just for example, but we talk about the students from the field of medical science, science and humanities and social science as well, all around. So we focus more on the future leaders, so our students. Impactful research in the innovation. So once we talk about the problem in the society these days, the impactful research in innovation should fit well with COVID-19 pandemic. And that's what happened. At Chulalongkorn University, we are producing our own vaccine, and that went well so far. We might have very good news next year in March. So we can provide the society with vaccines, and that's innovation for societies to see. The mRNA vaccine called COVID-19, and the collaboration between Chulalongkorn University and University of Pennsylvania in the US. So we focus on the issue right away. But not just that, we have many more. So we combined the innovations for society in terms of COVID-19 pandemic, 22 of them throughout the university. And then we found something that is very cute and interesting. As you can see, the Labrador dog, 6 of them, they can smell COVID-19, right? At a School of Veterinary Science. And then before we know it, we got to be on the cover page of New York Times for the first time of the university, right? Because he got very clear message, and it's clear issues that we would like to go for. In terms of sustainability, of course, we try to actually go for the sustainability and a sustainable development. We even have the website solely for sustainability matters called Green Chula, for example. These are just the examples of understanding the brand well. So I would like to keep the long story short, because the process got to be more than 2 years in process before launching everything. But we keep our eyes on the social listening as well. So we know exactly which issue that we should actually put forward, right? So for each month, the dean meeting will see what happened online. And then they know exactly the dashboard of communication. So that's the measurement from the inside, the insight. And then we use some digital tools, including SEO, search engine optimization. So down there, you see the results of using the effective tool of the digital marketing world, right? In the past, before using the tool, traffic of website of Chula, 11.5 million. But once we use the digital tool, it's 16.7 million. In terms of impression, from 146 million impressions, moved up to 262 million impressions. So everything can be measured. Everything can be counted, right, in terms of marketing, in terms of communication. And then once we would like to have the budget for communication, once everything can be measured, then the budget can be released effectively, right? And we can show exactly what happened in terms of the keywords that Chula would like to go for. We would like to move the keyword and link of Chula to the first page of Google search. And then we show that the progress to the dean meeting and the executive meetings all the time, right? So at the end of the day, we got what we found, the communication model during this super VUCA period, from branding to marketing. So we got the branding first, of course, and then we got the directions in place. Then we move on to the marketing part, clear marketing message, actually messages got to be in place. Then we started from internal marketing platform, communicate with people inside first. Then we use digital marketing tactics and social listening tools to help, right? And then it's found to be quite effective. So before we know it, the results. We got the price spreads of the news all around, not just in the country, but all around the world. What happened next in terms of ranking? I mentioned ranking races, right? And then in terms of academic reputation, we jump into the world's top 100 academic reputation by QS University ranking for 2 years in a row. And in terms of sustainability, Chula ranked #1 in Asia this year for global impact by THE Impact Rankings 2021. So this is what happened, and this is what we have learned so far from the communication in the higher educational institution during COVID-19 pandemic, and it is the integration of branding and marketing communication indeed. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Ajahn Ek. Okay, so actually for your information, Ajahn Ek is, well, actually the title is pretty long, correct me if I'm wrong. Ajahn Ek is actually right now the assistant to the president for visibility for
brand and communication.
For brand communication, yeah. So because the title is pretty long and then it's changed after the president. Okay, so that's why Ajahn Ek is the right person to talk about this together with Ajahn Parichat as well. Okay, this is very interesting, and I think lesson learned from Chulalongkorn University can be shared and learned with other higher educational institutions in Thailand and other countries in the world as well during the COVID-19 situation. Okay, I think you may have a question to ask Ajahn Ek later, but before we move to Q&A session, not only presenter from Chulalongkorn University, together with us, we also have our distinguished speaker from Faculty of Mass Communication, Chiang Mai University, Assistant Professor Kwanfa Sriprapandh. He's going to present his paper entitled Hegemony, Counter-Hegemony, and Lesson Learned of Conflict Resolution by Using Cultural Studies Approach. Ajahn Kwanfa, please.
Thank you, Dr. Jessada, and good afternoon, the presenter and all participation. I would like to present my article that the title is, I revised my title. The new title is the parallel of the traditional intellectual and hegemonic intellectual during the third wave of COVID-19 pandemic in Thailand. As we knew, Thailand prepared it to have management the pandemic well last year, but after April 2021, the third wave grabbed the country quickly and turned the success country to the fourth administration on COVID-19 pandemic. For the article, I applied the concept of hegemony by Gramsci to analyze the power exercising between the parallel worldviews of the youth government and the Thai social movement on the context of the third wave pandemic on planning for vaccine supply, vaccination policy, and the effectiveness of the vaccine and law and regulation that are forwarded for the protester controlling and the information distribution. My first argument is the Thai government has attributed the traditional intellectual from the perspective of the Gramsci on the pre-modern state. From the pre-modern state, especially the idea of faith and the common sense. The second argument, I propose that the Thai social movement are from the perspective of the hegemony as the form of hegemonic intellectual and the moral leadership on the pluralism and democracy context. And the last part, I propose the lesson learned from the concept of revolution organic for the conflict resolution on the COVID-19 pandemic context. This is the last update for the case of the Thai on COVID pandemic. For this the parallel of the traditional and hegemony intellectual. Gramsci defined hegemony as the exercising of ruling class authority and leadership over the subordinate classes to the combination of force and, more importantly, consent that is normally shown in the parliamentary regime. Furthermore, Gramsci is also categorized two types of intellectual that are traditional and hegemonic intellectual. He also specified it core characteristic of the traditional intellectual that consists of faith, and that's like the sense of the religions and the consequence of its formulate for consciousness in society. Gramsci also mentioned that traditional intellectual is the core character of the pre-modern state. On the other hand, he specified two hegemonic intellectual as the rational intellectual and the moral leadership in pluralism and democracy context. For traditional intellectual, he mentioned that the idea of the traditional intellectual which are framed on the society as a whole. Furthermore, there is also formulated the point as for consciousness in society. However, the hegemony intellectual is the practicing process of development in parts of the replacement of the traditionally imposed norm with understanding produced as the consequence of liberation. Then the parallel of these two worldviews are practicing during the COVID-19 pandemic. For the first part, I analyzed the administration of the youth government by Gramsci concept of the traditional intellectual and common sense. And the other parts of the hegemonic intellectual in society. The findings in third part are as the follow. The first is the social distribution and coordination. Prayut Chan-o-cha always has framed the COVID-19 public policy to the area of individual and family responsibility. On the other hand, the protester of Thai civil response is as the inequality of the public health care system on COVID-19, especially the constitution of the Kingdom of Thailand as of August 2007 present the compilation of the constitutional provision on the right to health of all Thai people. The second, the vaccine for all policy versus unplanning and undervalue for vaccine supply storage. From the empirical data show the Prayut government actively negotiate for a vaccine supply storage up after April, and it means after the third wave of the COVID-19. It means that they have no plan, but they also have strongly believe of the strength of the medical system on the first and second wave of pandemic. Thus, the Sinovac medical approval versus ineffective vaccine, and also the highly effective of machine vaccine and versus the list of data free one. The global scientists always test the vaccine combination on medical testing, always research on the mRNA as Pfizer or Moderna mix, and the viral vector vaccine at AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson only. The global scientists never ever test mix the vaccine with the Sinovac. That's why it's always risky for the Thai people to have the vaccine, especially Sinovac. For the second part, I would like to present the idea of pre-democracy movement as the hegemonic intellectual, as Kamchi mentioned. Kamchi specified this the perspective of the replacement of the traditional intellectual. This quotations scarcely suggest that hegemony is fully developed. Hegemony in form of the social practicing to circle the objective world and to establish a new alternative as the universal subject. The findings show that there are four important factors that active in the political movement. The Kamchi mentioned that the pro-democracy movement have the characteristic of hegemonic intellectual, especially the rational thinking, moral leadership on pluralism and democratic context. There are four important actors of pro-democracy movement in Thailand, especially the young student group movement as Kwanfa and also the group of Khammasat Student for Democracy and Talukas, the youngest of Thai teenage to fight for the public health and democracy. The youth movement and rational replacement of Thai norm. The youth movement continually have demand on reassignment of Prayut Chan-o-cha and also demand the revision of constitution on democracy perspective and monarchy reform. And the last movement is come from the Talukas protest group, construct themselves as the democratic movement from citizens. And their strategy is focused on the defendant-based strategy to respond to the violence from the police. I would like to present that the political movement in Thailand during the COVID-19 pandemic is related to the idea of the Kamchi that he proposed is called the revolution or origin of hegemony. He mentioned that it is the process of the replacement process in the area of the practicing between the absolute idea or absolute belief as a for consciousness or rational discord. He mentioned that the way to success to develop the concrete and progressive way of public certification of the youth movement to be extended to cooperation to the other social interest group as the intercaste and the whole society as called the is called the revolutionary original of hegemony. What we will aim from the Kamchi perspective from the conflict between the traditional intellectual versus the hegemony intellectual in the modern state that are based on the rational of thinking and moral leadership and moral and democracy context. In itself of the traditional intellectual, he mentioned that the people is controlled by the army, the faith, or the forces, and law and regulation, and the construction of false consciousness, and it will be believed as the common sense in the all people. Will it end from the traditional intellectual? Gramsci mentioned that in itself, it have a problem of capable of solving in the society, and also has the moral problem. That is, in the end, it will have a civil war to replacement this society. On the other hand, what will happen on the hegemonic intellectual to fight back to the peace state or pre-modern state that have a characteristic of the traditional intellectual? Gramsci specify the two factors that will make the social movement success. The first one is the intra-caste. It means the network between the people, the group of people that has the strong belief as just like the pro-democracy. And the next one, the next one that makes the movement success is the inter-caste hegemony. It means the political movement have to extend the collaboration to the other social interest group as the inter-caste. He mentioned that the political actor in the parliamentary parliament system that will make the hegemonic intellectual fully developed. That is all my finding from the idea of the parallel of the traditional and hegemony intellectual during the COVID-19 pandemic in Thailand.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ajahn Kwanfa from Chiang Mai University on his paper entitled The Parallel of Traditional Intellectual and Hegemonic Intellectual During the Third Wave of COVID-19 Pandemic in Thailand. Okay, so we have about 20 minutes from now. So I would like to collect questions from the floor and from our audience at Asia Center as well. If you have any questions, please. Yeah, you can send it through chat box or you can turn on your microphone. We are more than happy to entertain your question.
Well, Jessada Sensei, maybe I could, this is Robin here. Thank you all for your fine presentations. Maybe I could just ask three or make 3 or 4 points / questions. Jess, you mentioned the Japanese model, and as you were going through the Japanese model, I was wondering if the literature on communication during public emergencies has extended to other pandemics, whether it's the SARS or Ebola or whatever. And so is there some model that has emerged from in the literature? And you mentioned cultural sensitivities, cultural aspects. So is the American model different from the Japanese model and so on? That's one aspect. I would like to link up yours point about the single messaging and maybe ask you, but also Ajahn Kwanfa about this idea of a single messaging, the single, yes, I think you said the need for a single messaging across different levels and spaces within a country. So I would like to be maybe just add a little bit of a spice it up here a little bit. Is there a potential contradiction between what you are saying and what Ajahn Kwanfa is saying, in the sense that you are understandably and rightfully pointing to the need for government to adopt a single messaging. But here, Ajahn Kwanfa is suggesting that we have to look out for the problem of dominant discourses, hegemonic discourses. And so Ajahn Kwanfa is, I think, rightly pointing out to, I think he used the term, the reification of dominant discourses about COVID in society. And here he's obviously referring to the government of Thailand, the Prayut government, and so on. So is there a contradiction between the idea of single communication versus a more decentralized communication to avoid the reification? And lastly, Ajahn Kwanfa suggests the need for free flow of information, freedom of expression as a way of countering anti-hegemonic discourses. And of course, here he uses Gramsci's hegemonic discourse, and you could also point to Ajahn Kwanfa, the Frankfurter School or Habermas, and so on. They seem to connect here. And I wonder, lastly, for Ajahn Ek, how does the Chula model help us to understand communication in times of a public emergency? Because very interesting what you presented. How can it help us to understand public emergency communication? Because here you are talking about the branding of a university over time. Now, can that model be applied to to communication about messaging about a pandemic? I'll stop there.
Okay. Thank you very much for a very interesting question. Okay, so let's move to my part first. Well, according to the past experience in Japan, actually they had very little experience on dealing with pandemic because according to my literature review, they survived from SARS, they survived from MERS, so Ebola, of course, not in Japan. So actually they had a very little experience in dealing with pandemic. The most recent pandemic that they got, in terms of preparation and communication is TB. Many decades before, which is like they set up like a center in order to distribute healthcare system and information in each local, in each province and village. So that traced back to, I think, more than 50 years before for TB, which is not updated when they have to deal with their recent pandemic like COVID-19. Well, actually, Japan has past experience on dealing with natural disaster like tsunami and earthquake, but it's totally different when they have to deal with pandemic. And this is one of the weak points of Japan when they have to deal with COVID-19. So they don't have enough communication experience and communication facilities to deal with pandemic like COVID-19, to answer your first question. And the second question, in terms of cultural dimension, compared to Western countries like United States and Europe, countries in Europe, well, in terms of individualism versus collectivism, of course, people in the West, they are more individual. That's why when we have like the case of the government try to use lockdown or like wearing mask policy, people came out on the street and then protest, because they said that it's against their freedom of expression. So this is against their personal right. So in terms of individualism and collectivism is totally different from Japan. And in terms of uncertainty avoidance, countries like Singapore, which is like doing quite well in COVID-19 situation management, according to Bloomberg's resilience index, like Singapore always enjoy, like top 10, in the rank. And United States and many countries in Europe as well, they claim up, like they went quite well in the recent Bloomberg Resilience Index, as well as Nikkei Recovery Index as well. I think the keyword is lying beneath the term agility, agility. So they change themselves, they adapt themselves quite well according to the situation. So I think agility is against, it's against with, it is opposite with uncertainty avoidance, that's why I think these two key elements are the very important cultural aspect that made Japan, suffered quite a lot from COVID-19 situation. Okay, and the last point you mentioned, I mentioned about single message, and actually Ajahn Kwanfa talking about their hegemony, right? I think we have to look at hegemony, authoritarian, and single message differently. When I say single message, and I mean the government have to say, have to convey a very clear message, if it black or if it's white, and then the public may agree or disagree, may counterattack the policy, but the government have to take their public criticism into account and adjust, or it has to be transparent. It has to be clear. I think this, from my point of view, I think single message have to be clear and it has to be transparent. That's why I mentioned that single message is important. However, I didn't say that single message is top down. Single message is how to say, like is an excuse for you to deprive people freedom of expression. I don't say that. So I think this is different, because actually coincidentally I'm now writing another report for UNESCO on journalism, journalists and reporters' freedom and safety during COVID-19 situation. And we found that right now many countries in Southeast Asia, like Cambodia, Singapore, Thailand as well, the government tried to use the term fake news, to be an excuse to suppress and control public criticism towards the government's mismanagement. So I think, well, sometimes, the government try to make it unclear so that they can be floated, can be free or can be escaped from criticism. But actually, I think the government have to take accountability, on their policies by saying a clear message and single message to the public. And let's see if the public will say something against what the government try to say or not. So this is my point. Okay.
Thank you, Jess, and maybe Ajahn Kwanfa.
Thank you for your question and suggestion. For me and Kamchi perspective, for COVID-19 pandemic in Thailand, I think is as a power exercising, power practicing between the government and the civil society, especially the protester. I think the key factor that make the government successful in dominated discourse is come from the democratization or since they step up to the power 7 years, and by constitutional law, and also the fake democracy regime, and also the justice system. Especially, I think the problem of the law of Thailand is the criminal law section 112 and 116 that used for the Thai people who demand for the health equality, and also the resignment for the Prayut Chan-o-cha. That's it. And the other one, I think the in the part of civil society, especially the youth and the protester movement. Now they have to demand focus on the revision of the constitution that relate to the democracy regime that make the decentralization and the meaning of the to try the government domination.
Okay, thank you, Ajahn Kwanfa. So I think I would like to hear from Ajahn Ek as well. Actually, Ajahn Ek, we got a question from the chat box as well. I will read it. I will read it out right now. Okay. The question is: we have seen a rise along with university rankings of international accreditations to certify quality of teaching. What important would you give to university accreditations in branding and university post pandemic? Okay, so actually I've got the same question, Ajahn Ek. Well, since I also deal with university ranking before, so it's really painful, and it's really, but it is something that we have to get it through, right? So right now, do you think that COVID-19 situation will affect the university ranking in what way? So I think the question is pretty much the same with this question. Okay, so please.
What I tried to say upfront, so thank you very much for the questions. Both of the questions, I think, fit well with each other anyway. So I think in terms of understanding the brands and got the social listening tools and also the digital marketing tactics to help, then we actually try to fit well with the field of what happened these days. Just for example, in general, in terms of the pandemic, many universities, not just universities, but also many brands focus more on just the safety part of the internal matters. So once you lose the sights on the brands, then once it comes to something that is unsafe, like pandemic, then you jump around. And then we found in many brands and universities as well. So how to protect our people, our own people, of course, that's the thing, but that's something that you need to do, but you need to do something else. So once we look at the brand, we found, all right, that's not enough. As I mentioned, once it's come to Chulalongkorn University, it's innovations for society. It's not actually innovations for Chula itself. Therefore, it reminds us to do something for the society. And the reason why we actually let one of our eyes to look at the internal communication and safety matters, of course, but we need to communicate still in terms of sharing, in terms of innovations for society, right? And then we keep doing that. So that's the reason why we can actually blend the brand that have been done for a long time to the situation of the pandemic. I think that fit well with the first question from Asia Center. Then we got the question from the floor in terms of the accreditation. For me, it is like this. Once it's come to the accreditation matter, so we are in this from my viewpoint, we happen to be in the period of fear. And once it comes to VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, then everything seems to be in shock. Therefore, people all around would like to have something tangible to make it clear that the products or services that they would love to consume or go for got good enough quality. And then it brings me to the answer. The international accreditations, as Ajahn just mentioned, suffer time for all the faculty members and everyone, but it will be even more important because it's a tangible communication matters that people can actually hold on to in the period of fear, right? So it is more important indeed. I got to be in the process of AACSB and EQUIS before. I know it's very complex and it hurts. it hurts and harmful. But at the end of the day, we found it's the right side of it. Then you got something very tangible to hold on to in terms of communication as well. So many times communication is about make tangible, intangible matter tangible, and international accreditation helps in many ways.
Yeah, this is what do you do about branding? Make something intangible to be tangible. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, any other question from the floor? Okay, it seems like we've got the questions to our speakers and myself as well. So it's almost 1:30. So I would like to pass the floor back to James. So before we leave, I would like to say thank you to our speaker, Ajahn Ek from Chulalongkorn University and Ajahn Kwanfa from Chiang Mai University. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you to all speakers. Thanks, Jess, for moderating.